Joining me now is our international affairs commentator, Douglas Herbert.
Hi, Annette.
Doug's critics have called ASEAN, this 10-nation association, as a body which is both irrelevant and toothless. So are they going to be able to prove their detractors wrong at today's meeting?
They're going to try to put a brave face on what are inevitable and long-standing divisions among them. The ASEAN group, Annette, we have to remember its origins. It came about in the Cold War, 1967, and its principles, or perhaps its founding principles, are its worst enemy, i.e., it's non-aligned, meaning it's impartial, doesn't take sides. All of its decision-making has to be consensual. That means all 10 members have to agree. One doesn't agree, they're out. And non-interference in any of the other members' affairs. I want to show you why that's so difficult, given the issues you just mentioned. Could we bring up on the screen so our viewers can see, these are the 10 nations that are members of ASEAN. Some have joined over the years since 1967. You could see a few problems there. One is that Myanmar is a member, right? Myanmar's generals and leaders, to be clear, the military junta that seized power in 2021 and has had a violent crackdown on dissent ever since, they're not invited to this summit. And one of the big issues here is what happens in 2026 when Myanmar is supposed to take over the rotating presidency. Well, so far it's expected perhaps the Philippines is going to stand in. They're not giving the official reason, but it will stand in. But you could see what's happening here is you have autocratic monarchies in there, plus you have some democracies. Countries such as, say, Cambodia, Laos, which I think I'm covering up there on the screen, Laos, they are allies right now of the regime, of the regime in Myanmar. They've at least spoken to the military junta there. Others will not speak to them at all. Thailand, meanwhile, has been holding talks with both Aung San Suu Kyi, the deposed democratically elected leader's allies, and with the military junta. With Myanmar, I think the best they are going to be to do is fine words, nice words about this so-called 5-point peace plan that they first broached after the coup in 2021. It's come to naught so far, but at least they'll pay lip service to it. On China, this South China Summit issue, Annette, it's a big deal because on the eve of this summit, China released a new national map, which was provocative to say the least, because it basically claims almost sovereignty over the entirety of the South China Sea, which flies in the face of demands by Philippines, Vietnam, Malaysia. This is an issue that's going to be resolved at this summit, and not even after this summit. They're trying to arrive at a, quote, code of conduct for the South China Sea by 2026. Given the countries I just showed on that screen, I would not, if I were a betting man, I would not put a lot of money on them, on this code of conduct really coming to fruition and really being able to work in practice.
But a notable absentee is, of course, the US President Joe Biden. How significant is that, Doug?
It's significant to the extent that it feeds this perception that ASEAN has declining influence, as you said, irrelevant, the, quote, toothless talking shop that critics call it. But let's be clear here. Joe Biden isn't really snubbing ASEAN. He is attending the Group of 20 summit in India. Afterwards, he's flying on to Vietnam to try to enhance U.S. relations, troubled relations, obviously, with that country for many decades. He's been very present at past ASEAN summits. He was in November 2022, just last year. He was in Cambodia for the summit. Before that, in May of last year, he hosted several members of the ASEAN group at the White House. The White House would say, when you say he's snubbing the ASEAN, they would say the White House has a remarkable track record in showing its engagement in this region. This is because the president of the U.S. is a busy man. Yeah, you have to pick and choose. It's not because ASEAN isn't important. It's simply because he doesn't have time right now, and he is still engaged in the region.
Douglas Herbert, thank you.